Who is filled with brooding grief and ready to extract vengeance? This guy. Oh, come on, like you weren't gonna make a joke with a hand like that. Hello everyone, Davey here with a McFarlane toy review, a very special one indeed, since we have now finally came across the Batman 2022 movie figures from the McFarlane Toys series. So I finally have seen them out in the wild in my local Target. This one was then presented to me. I was very excited to actually have him in person, actually witness him in person and being able to purchase him. But now actually playing with them and kind of messing around with this interpretation of the character that McFarlane Toys took upon themselves to give us like a full-scale style of collectible figure, whether it be in the 6-inch or 7-inch like this one is, variety. I gotta be honest, it may have come off a little short from expectations. Now, don't feel necessarily swayed by that opening line. If you guys do want to, in fact, add your own Battinson Batman figure to your McFarlane Toys collection, be sure to use the affiliate link in the description below. It helps out the channel, and you guys can pick up your very own figure. Now, why is it that I find this figure somewhat flawed? Because even though this is meant to be a McFarlane Toys figure, and they mostly pride themselves in not only the 22 points of articulation, but also the 7-inch stature, kind of standing above the traditional 6-inch scale that a lot of different companies like Toy Biz and Hasbro always aims for. He still feels somewhat to scale with this version of the character. So he is in no way, shape, or form as bulky or as towering or as intimidating as, say, some of the other much more over-the-top versions of the character that even McFarlane Toys has given us in toy form or in figure form, such as one of my favorites, Arkham Knight Batman, or the animated series Batman with the broad shoulders. They managed to at least keep the look and version of this character to scale without giving him any kind of unnecessary bulk or exaggerations in design, like the shoulders aren't too broad. Everything is actually scoped out rather well, and I gotta give him some credit for that. And when it comes to actually molding and designing the figure here, they did a rather exceptional job around the chest area, which arguably is my favorite part. Loving the bat symbol there that's made out of those two pieces that a lot of people are theorizing is like a battering of some sorts. That sculpting and detail still found there, as well as the padding you see along the abdominal area. The utility belt, of course, is a lot less flashier than even the past ones from even the Nolan trilogy, which at least had the little bronze paint decal. Here it's just straightforward black with a couple of matted finishes, but still sporting an awful lot of the utility stuff that Batman is expected to wear, such as the little bombs, pockets, different kind of gadgetry going on right there, as well as different strappings and details and texturings going along the legs and the knee pads, while at the same time retaining that look like he really did put all this stuff himself, including the motorcycle suit kind of shoulder pads he's sporting right there on the side that are more so attached to the bicep as opposed to the proper shoulder for proper movement that we'll tackle later on in the articulation portion of the review. But then you get to the gauntlets and he's sporting those little cylinders, those silver cylindrical pieces on his gauntlets that are becoming a staple for this version of the character we're getting in the 2022 movie. So when you see that, you instantly know which version of Batman you're dealing with. So it's cool that they still brought that forth. Unfortunately, they also showcase, in my opinion, my least favorite part of the new Robert Pattinson design, and that's the little spikes on his gauntlets. Obviously, Batman is known for having those little claws things on the side of his gauntlets, and in the new costume, not only from the pictures that I've seen, but even some cosplay sites that have started to put their own suits together, they've paid attention to this detail, but maybe they shouldn't have, because I've noticed from, again, all those different resources that these gauntlet pieces right here are meant to be like these straps that are just dangling off, and that forms the spikes on his gauntlets that Batman is known for. But because they're meant to be like extra slack of like straps and buckles, it, to me personally, subjectively, it looks ugly. And it looks like they did that as well in the figure, because you'll notice right here it is rather warped on these little gauntlets here. If they were to have stood out and in place and firmly, maybe it would have looked a lot better. but they kept the wiggleness of them intact. So I guess you can give them props for some accuracy, but personally, I don't like how flimsy they kind of feel. So they still carry that over here in figure form, but not necessarily for the better. And you see that coming across not only on one, but both gauntlets, unfortunately. Then we get to the cape, and it's a similar situation here where I appreciate the actual faithfulness to this version of the cape. I haven't really seen it too much in action from some of the TV spots and things like that, but I understand that it's a different look. You have the little 2 indentations on the side here, very customary for Batman. However, then it flattens out here towards the middle. So I understand that they were trying to go for something a little unique. Personally, I wish that they would have gone for a much more traditional cape, but McFarlane went ahead and replicated it anyway, especially with how much bulkier and kind of enveloping it's doing on the overall ensemble here. So that's his stick, and they kind of brought it on over here in figure format with McFarlane. Then we get to the cowl, which I have complete mixed feelings on, one of which is completely already apparent, as you can already tell. For one, the sculpting and actual modeling of the cowl itself and the face is pretty faithful in all the right reasons. It definitely is. You can see a little bit of the stitching for the cowl to then again replicate how he put the costume together. He put the cowl together himself, and he looks legitimate with it. Not only is the texturing and the detailing of the stitching quite right, but they even got a little bit of his jawline really accurate to that of Robert Pattinson. You can definitely tell that this is meant to be Robert Pattinson's Batman, and they definitely didn't throw that away. You can still see that coming through well with the paint decals on his lips, the skin tone, as well as the sculpting itself. Why in the living bat vengeance would you then give him the side eye? I've already foreshadowed this in another video. I believe it was for the 3 Jokers, Criminal and Clown, where unfortunately the criminal was dealt with that side eye in the opposite direction towards his right. Battinson, if you will, here was unfortunately cursed with a left side eye, and we saw this from a mile away, or specifically from when the first press release photos of this figure were released, showing him with that side eye. And since then, unfortunately, they never changed it, they never backed off on it, and he's still holding it here in place, that it then causes problems for, again, posability, for being able to, for a collector with OCD such as myself, putting him in the right pose or in the right stance. And to get him in those poses is actually rather decent due to, again, those 22 points of articulation, which for the most part, they did an adequate job. Of course, you got the head, which rotates 360 degrees. Of course, I don't know what other direction you would want him to turn to, since he's obviously going to be turning to his left each and every single time due to that stupid side eye. But it also does pivot slightly up and then very much down, as you see right there. Then we get to the shoulders, where things get a little problematic, unfortunately, because as you can tell from the sculpting and the actual design of the character, you have the cape that then kind of encroaches here in the middle, meets halfway through, and then kind of combines into this overall shoulder piece. That's meant as part of the overall design and look of this version of the character. But when you throw in these shoulder pieces that are hidden underneath, that once again, like I mentioned before, with an awful lot of Batman figures, they took these shoulder pieces and attached them to the bicep area as opposed to the top of the shoulder. That's supposed to make moving the shoulders a lot easier when it comes to posability, but for some reason on this one, it's a little problematic, especially when you're dealing with the right one. With the left one, it's not so bad. You do have that vertical joint that allows movement 360 degrees, but as you can see right there, that piece is already starting to kind of bounce because of not only the chest piece here in the front, but also the cape itself. It kind of gets caught amongst the top ridge right here, and because of that, you do run the risk of folding the piece or creasing it or doing something about it, so please be careful. You kind of have to press it down and slide it inwards to make sure it's kind of cooped up and cozied up in there, and to make sure that you're not popping this piece off and ruining the adhesive that's holding it all together. You also have that extra piece right here, that extra cut to be able to allow extension, except with mine, it's a little limited because of this piece, to the point where I've already tried extending this arm outwards, and I can only get about that far before I start to either feel the resistance or actually legitimately pop off the arm altogether, and I have to pop it back in, and that of course can cause a little bit of looseness on that joint if you're doing it too frequently. Then we move on to the right shoulder, and that's where, again, things get a little problematic because more so than this one, I feel like the actual articulation is slightly limited to the point where it then creases the shoulder piece even more so than the left one. And as you can see right there, it's already starting to get a little bit of resistance, but a full 360 is doable. You just got to be careful, and the shrugging motion is also present. You can kind of see right there that pressing forward, you have the shoulder pieces being flipped more so towards the front, but when you press them back, he then kind of shrugs his shoulders ever so more to give him a much more intimidating look. So it is doable. You just got to be careful with these shoulder pieces because of the way that the overall Battinson costume was actually designed in the first place. Then at the elbows, we of course have the traditional 2 joints that do fully bend at each elbow. So that was very happy to see. And then a full articulated joint, ball joint in the wrist that allows movement of the wrists 360 degrees as well as pivot slightly inwards and outwards. One mid-level torso joint that does allow movement left and right. In fact, I would go as far as to say you could do a full 360, but I'm not going to force it any more than I have to. No real waist articulation. And then we move to the legs, which are of course being able to move forwards about that much. It does start to angle towards the sides as opposed to flipping directly forward, but there's an actual reason for that purposeful design, if you will, because of the upcoming Batcycle vehicle that he's meant to be able to mount. And then of course the proper ratcheted extension to the sides about that far. 2 joints at the knee right there that allow full movement about that far back on both knees, and it's actually done really well. They're all ratcheted, but it never feels too firm to the point where you're gonna have to either blow dry the figure with a heat dryer, with a hair dryer of some kind, or put them in boiling water to loosen up those joints. Thankfully, nothing too severe like that like I've had in figures past. And of course with the feet, the ankles are able to bend about that far back, slightly forwards about that much, and then a full 360 rotation horizontally along with the toesies that are able to bend at both feet. Now, as I was tackling that articulation, specifically around the hands, you may have noticed, if you've been watching closely, as they said in The Prestige, one hand is carefully modeled to look kind of like an open fist, but the other is specifically modeled to look like a very straightly opened, completely open hand, almost similar to that of like a karate chop kind of looking stance. And at first when I saw that, I was like, what the hell is going on here? As I pulled him out of the packaging, I just was like, what was the purpose of modeling him this way, modeling that specific hand that way? And then as I look closely, I noticed that there is in fact a gaping hole in the middle of his palm. And that's where I had to draw my attention to the only accessory that Battinson here came with, which is his grapple gun. It's a carefully etched piece of rubber plastic. It's carefully molded to have the little details there that are reminiscent of a grapple gun, but it is nevertheless a molded rubbery piece of plastic that does have a little bit of bend to it, except it's still pretty rugged and pretty firm. But if you flip it around, you'll carefully notice that there is in fact a peg, and you can pretty much connect the dots right there, because this grapple gun is meant to somewhat emulate the little device that he has going on with his initial, as you want to call it, year 2 grapple gun that he's gonna have in the movie. And I know exactly what they're doing, because I have seen the TV spot where he pulls out the grapple gun trying to evade the police or whoever it is that he's getting shot by. And in doing so, you'll notice the little contraption he's got going on with said grapple gun, that it's very reminiscent of Taxi Driver, where he's got the retracting gun coming out of his sleeve. He's got a similar thing going on here with the grapple gun, and they're trying to kind of replicate that kind of look for the grapple gun here. However, in doing so, I feel like there's a few conflicts of interest in respects to the figure here. For one, it's kind of a bitch to put the grapple gun inside of his hand. Yes, the peg fits snugly into the hole in his hand, so it stays on quite firmly, and it actually takes quite a bit of effort to take it out of the hand once more if you want to be able to take that out and remove it. However, again, couple of conflicts of interest. For one, the hand is molded that way and it's stuck that way. So if you ever want to pose them in any other kind of format, you're going to have to just dance around the fact that that hand is designed like this. And of course, that makes for some funny poses later down the line, especially when shooting the B-roll for this review. But to me, the biggest one is then going back to the infamous side eye that they gave Battinson here, because he is looking to his left. Why in the hell then would you make the grapple hand, if you will, the right hand? Wouldn't it have made more sense to have it be in the left hand, because then he can at least aim with this hand and have it look like he's aiming and looking down his sights accordingly. Whereas having the grapple gun in this hand, you kind of have to pose him and then kind of bend it in a way to make it feasible and somewhat realistic to have him look that way. So if anything, you kind of have to incline the head, to more so towards his right to make it look like he's aiming that way. You know what I'm saying? Like everything needs to fit within that peripheral vision to make all of this kind of make sense, if you will. And that's another significant flaw for me to kind of at least do away with the grapple gun. And maybe it would have been better to either throw in a secondary accessory or have him have some kind of side holster to properly fit and put away the grapple gun when he's not sporting it in his hand. And see, that's just it. It attaches actually rather well to the hand, to the point where I either need to have some significant force in pulling it out or just leave it alone for now at least, and kind of tuck it away here, since it kind of blends in a little bit to the dark aesthetic of the cape and you can barely even see it. So yes, I'd be lying if I didn't have a set of expectations for the 2022 Batman figure for the new movie from McFarlane Toys. And as time went on and I started to somewhat accept the side eye from some of the promo pics I saw, I then was quick to realize that it still poses a problem, especially when you throw in accessories or lack thereof, or the way that some of those accessories play into the figure, especially not knowing that the molded karate chop hand, as I like to call it, was going to be a thing, because those promo pics did an adequate job of hiding it with because of the way that the cape is colored and the overall shading of the figure was able to kind of mask it and not really bring forth attention to it, and therefore it never really crossed my mind. Now, handling him and dealing with those poses and dealing with a little bit of the articulation and again the conflicts within the figure, from the shoulder pads to the grapple gun and the side eye, I would say that this is a heavily flawed figure for the new Batman line that sadly I would not be opposed to McFarlane giving another crack at it later in the future, whether it be some kind of reissue with different accessories in mind, a new variant that has a different gaze in his eyes, the paint application in his eyes, or just something overall different that is at the very least not Drifter Bruce Wayne, which is definitely a McFarlane I'm going to go ahead and just skip and make do with Battinson here, that still has a good assortment of redeeming qualities, from the armor sculpting to the color detail, as well as the shading and paint applications on his gauntlets, and still a worthwhile figure if you're a huge Batman fan such as myself. But if you're not necessarily a completist, I would say that you can then kind of turn your attention more so to the other McFarlanes that are going to be coming out here in 2022. If you guys are looking to the Batman 2022 McFarlane toy reviews, there are going to be some more coming to the channel in the very near future, and if you guys want to stay tuned for those, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you guys never miss a single one. Or if you want to see another McFarlane toy review at all, make sure to check out the one showing up on screen right now. And as always guys, stay humble. I'll see you on the next video.